Greetings. This is Skyler Saunders seeing the food. What's current? I'm going to jump into this first live, testing the waters. I'm seeing what's going on, what's moving, shaking, and popping. But I just wanted to get to the situation in Sudan and what it also represents to America and the world. And let's start with cooking shows. I'm sure you've seen them. They're competitive, they're fierce, they're literally fiery, and they mean a great deal. They pack a great punch to anyone who thinks about ideas in the kitchen. Now, it's like we see them making these dishes like a Kobe beef, caviar, lobster, quiche. I know that probably doesn't even exist. I'm just throwing it out there. But and it's topped with saffron, and then they give it to the judges and they say, "Oh, this was very tender and very moist, and I enjoyed the flakiness of it, but it was missing a bit of a punch to it. Didn't have as much fire to it." And they go on like it's cool, and there are literally people starving in the streets, and we're critiquing cooking. And you know what? That's a virtue. I'd rather take the cooking shows over the thought of people dying in the street from starvation. You know why? Because it's selfish. Because you're thinking of yourself when you are on a cooking show. You want to be the best. You want to try out new things. And of course, there are very uh, great amounts of chefs who give out free turkeys, have their own charities, have various channels to help the poor and hungry and those that are starving. But I still would like to see the cooking show rather than see someone waste away because they didn't have a meal. So I would say that if there was ever anyone to look at the different sides of helping other countries like Sudan in its turmoil, with its generals fighting over I don't even know what a piece of land, or it doesn't matter. Uh, the people are suffering, and that requires private charity. That requires the sense that you don't use the government as the tool to say you're going to give aid. Government's been doing that for decades. And it's weird too because there's some instances where we dropped off food packages and bombs at the same time. So you don't know what you're going to get. You get some rocket or some scrambled eggs mix. You never know. So with Sudan being the top priority right now in the news, besides on the international scale, it's the business of business to aid people when and if it's possible. If you can get people in and out safely to a country that's racked with uh, war, then you should be able to say, all right, we're going to help you, but we're not going to get the government involved. And then it extends beyond that. It extends beyond the food as well. It extends to medicine and medical care. It extends to all the different facets of bringing people together on a scale of knowledge and how to use the facilities. That's another thing you have to remember when it comes to the food. You're giving people all these different foods, but you need a waste management system afterwards, or it could all kinds of problems could arise. You have diseases and viruses because of the wastewater or waste going into the drinking or potable water parts. So it's not just the food, it's the whole infrastructure that private organizations should concern themselves with. Not the government, not the United States government, which still spends billions of dollars trying to appease and trying to bring about some kind of peace, but not peace, because, like I said, we drop bombs and pamphlets and food packages all the time, given our history. But what makes it so amazing is the fact that these private organizations, these 501c3s, I won't call them nonprofits because there is profit, spiritual profit, and monetary profit as well. But for the most part, it's non-taxable organizations or tax deductible organizations that provide the most care. They're the ones that are on the front lines that really provide the best ideals and the best ways to cope with tragedies. Even in America, the greatest, most noblest country ever devised had issues such as Hurricane Katrina. And who stepped in? Not FEMA, not the Federal Emergency Management Administration. They came later. They came with their baggage. They came with all their, messiness. Not just because of their messiness, but because it shouldn't exist. The FEMA should not be within the government's purview because it doesn't have anything to do with protecting individual rights. So, when you have different corporations like Walmart that come through and give out water and different care packages and diapers and women's sanitary needs and all these different products, that they're able to handle because it's a multi-billion-dollar company. I mean, that's beautiful. That's a wonderful sight to see. And same goes with Sudan. As long as we get our people out of there, out of the embassies, and the hundreds of other Americans that live in Sudan, as long as we get them out and get the aid in somehow, maybe do flyovers, instead of dropping bombs, drop, the pamphlets and the cereal, mix, drop some oatmeal on them. It just takes enough effort to really understand just what it means to be a citizen of this great United States. Because we live for the cooking shows. We do. You're fascinated. You're looking at the screen like, how do they make that? What is it? They're using leeks and they're using cauliflower. And what is this? And then they make the most beautiful creations. And you can only imagine just how much they taste. There's no, smell-o-vision or taste-o-vision. But you can just imagine, even one of the worst dishes, the dishes that don't make the cut are probably better than what you probably ever had in your life if you've never been to a Michelin star restaurant or something like that. And those that look for the basics of foods to eat, it's really a shame, because what people don't really acknowledge is the expense. It's, oh, but we have to give to the poor. At whose expense? We have to feed the hungry. At whose expense? We have to take care of the needy. At whose expense? Who's going to pay for all this? Who is going to provide all of these goodies? Who's going to stand up and say, oh, I have already brought myself to this point, and I'm going to say, I want my organization to represent everything that I am, and that's part of the human condition. And that's fine. That's beautiful. You care about other human beings selfishly. Because you care about yourself, you therefore care about other people who are values. You don't care about your enemies. You don't love or like your enemies, but even your neighbor. You don't necessarily have to hate them, but you don't love or like him more than yourself or your wife or your husband or your children or his children or her children, you take on the probability of being one of the few people to ever discover what it truly means to be of the people, what that truly means to be a citizen in this country. We have such a bountiful plate. I mean, GDP or gross domestic product is not the best measure in the world for everything because it doesn't account for the spiritual conditions, the ideas that are expressed. They have the happiness index now, and we don't really rank as high, ironically, because in the Declaration it said the pursuit of happiness, and that's a key word too. You have the right to the pursuit, quote unquote, pursuit of happiness, not the guarantee happiness. You're not guaranteed anything in this world. You have to make it. You have to go for it. You have to try to build. You have to do everything you can to make life the best it possibly can be. So when you have people who discourage others and try to say that, oh, I can't lend a hand because, I mean, I'm all about, me. I'm not, that's not selfishness. That's either arrogance or narcissism. If you can't lend a hand rationally, that's fine. That's okay. If you say that because my family comes first, I come first because I'm the one that's the prize, I'm the one that's in charge of my life and my savings and my bank account, that's permissible. That's okay. But all those people who deny charitable organizations or deny the fact that America should not be able to, as a government, send care packages or anything else along those lines to distant countries. That's the point that I'm saying right now. It's our overabundance, and that is a sign of a functioning brain. The functioning brains that are that consist in this country, that make up this country. We use our minds, and it's sad because businessmen are quiet. They just do their business and get money. They don't hardly stand up on a soapbox. When they're getting pressed in front of Congress, they're getting lambasted, and they hardly ever say, you know what, you're a bureaucrat. You sit back and make up laws, or you pass laws, or you dream up all kinds of bills and acts to try to denigrate and degrade the human beings in this country, the American citizens. You're at fault. I might be on, the other side of this, table, but you're the ones that are destroying America. You're the ones that are saying that it's not possible for people to flourish in this country. They need a helping hand from the government. They need their welfare, their food stamps, their SNAP, their EBT cards, all of that. And it's costing billions of dollars. And it's not even the victims of that are the problem here. The victims are the ones who are receiving these benefits. I mean, obviously, people are being hurt, the ones that have to pay taxes in order to fund other people's lifestyles. But the main problem is that the victim is the person receiving these programs, Obamacare, welfare, and the like. They're getting the worst part of it because they're saying that I don't have to work, I don't have to put anything effort. I don't have to do anything, special. I don't have to, fight for mine and go for mine. That's not how it has to be. But continue. People continue to take their handouts. That gets cool. And that's another thing too. Combined with that, within the same ideal, is the idea of schools, how schools should be privatized. I mean, they used to have free breakfast programs by the Black Panther Party, but at whose expense? It had to be somebody buying the eggs and the grits and the bacon and the pancakes. It might have been themselves, but somebody had to pay for it. There's no such thing as a free breakfast or a free lunch or a free dinner. Somebody had to produce it somewhere, somehow. And in the case of Sudan and Khartoum, with these warring generals, it's just a big mess because you have a country already 36% of which is below the poverty line, and you have people still struggling with different viruses and different diseases, probably still recovering from the pandemic with COVID, and they expect people to take on the role of altruist, the other worshiper, the whim worshiper, as Ayn Rand would say. So when you see, those cooking shows, just remember how that they are the best example of what capitalism is all about. It's the idea, it's the spirit. It's not just the material. The food is one thing, the money is one thing. All that can be tangible and is physical, but without the spiritual, without all that, you don't have material. You can take a nice car. You can take a Bentley, beautiful, beautiful vehicle with the B, with the emblem, with the wings, and you just consider how many people, how much thought went into the tires and the wood paneling and the chrome and the paint job. All that had to be figured out. Engineers had to see and sculpt and devise and try and continue to do with their own minds as their sole thing. And it's very quiet. Hardly many books ever detail life of a car designer. Hardly many books detail the life of a CEO or a president or executive director of a 501c3 who wants to give money or benefits out to people that deserve it. That's hardly even championed, either in the art world or as in fiction or not in films and novels. But in the real life, we hardly even bring it up. I mean, just look at anything, everything. Look at this camera, this microphone I'm using, this shirt, this tie, this hat. My pants, my socks. It all came from somebody's head, somebody's brain. You have to figure out the mathematics of everything. Everything has to be drawn up and scaled, and everything from a tack to a suspension bridge took a line of thought. It took a bit of understanding, and it took everything that was supposed to be a problem and turned into a solution. So, when you watch cooking shows, just remember that. Just remember the amount of thought that goes into them. And disregard the fact that people are starving. There will always be somebody. You can call them a bleeding heart, But that's the best part. If there's somebody in need, there's gonna be somebody that has greed and will try to make a buck. That'll try to make their own life better by making someone else's life better. That's the trade. That's the beautiful system of laissez-faire capitalism, and that's the only proper capitalism. Not spiritual capitalism, not compassionate capitalism or anything of the like. I think that with Sudan, there should be trucks lined up from the Ugandan businessmen and women, from those individuals who have the means, because there are still rich people in Sudan, not very many, not a whole lot, and there's a bit of a middle class, and like I said, it's 36% below the poverty level. So there is quite a swath of impoverished people. So if we take into account the fact that all these people who need water and diapers and sanitary concerns, and amongst the food, we should be able to say that that country should help itself, and that the Ugandan government should not touch anything at all. And the American government, especially, should not touch anything at all. Should have nothing to do with caring for, providing services, or anything. Only private 501(c)(3) should be involved. That's it. There's no in between. There's no middle ground. There's no gray area. There's no what if. No, there's just private enterprise aiding individuals. That's it. It's all. And there are going to be people that say, "Oh, well, the government's not rich enough. It doesn't have enough power." No kidding. That's why it shouldn't be involved. That's why private organizations should be. And they'll say, "Oh, but America's been doing it for years, and look at the results." Just consider the results. Over our years of packing up and sending out, whoever lost the championship, the T-shirts, they go to certain countries, and they're being worn, but also they become waste, and they clog up the different water systems, and they don't break down because they're made of plastic. Usually, they're not cotton anymore. Cotton would break down, but these pieces of clothing are being worn as well as worn down and not being eliminated properly, and they end up in the water systems, and they clog them. It's just a fact. So it's same principle goes for food. Like I said, you're going to need a sanitation system. You're getting all those meals out. You need to have a safe and clean water area, and a proper sanitation system to aid all those people, to engage with them. I think that if we as Americans can understand the fact that there should be no welfare state, it would apply to also the billions of dollars that go across the world. I mean, I'm totally against it, but we should be worried about our own people before we help anybody else. I don't think we should help ourselves through the government, but especially we should not be giving out aid and products and support to countries, even our allies, who don't belong on our list. And that list is American people. And again, the American people shouldn't even receive the aid. Once we undo the system of schooling and education in this country, Once we either fire or replace or do something completely radical and extremist, which I think are valuable and viable terms considering what I'm talking about, we should get rid of them, get rid of the provosts, get rid of the deans, get rid of the presidents of all these colleges and universities. That's number one. And two, ensure that they're teaching, the faculty is that they're teaching the proper ideas of America. And that's reason, individualism, and capitalism instead of mysticism, collectivism, and altruism. Those are the key three ideas. RIC, reason, individual, and capitalism. If we were to install those across the board by option, not government force, but just by private suggestion, private working through, private negotiation, we would see a groundswell. We would see a wellspring. We would see a fountainhead, the beginning and the source of prosperity by leaps and bounds, even that we have ever experienced in this country before. We will have taken our own ideals and made them real, because that's where everything goes. You have your war colleges, you have your different universities that have ROTC. They're training the next 4-star general 30, 40 years from now. But they got to start as second lieutenants, and ensigns. That's the point. If they got the ideas of how to properly fight wars, then we wouldn't even have to deal with Sudan. We wouldn't have to have any dealings with Ukraine. The enemy would be wiped out, would be vanquished. And America wouldn't lose a single human being. Not a son, not a father, not a daughter, not an aunt, not an uncle, not a cousin, a brother, anyone. They would have been intact. The family would have been intact. Given the fact that we have such a robust system and we have such a robust system of ideals based on Ayn Rand's philosophy. And that's what is so important, because you have the cooking shows, which I love, Beating Bobby Flay and Chopped. They're great. They're wonderful shows. And every time I'm thinking, I'm just like, there's a person probably outside in the studio, wants a ham sandwich. And these people are putting together something with octopus legs and lobster tails and just mixing and mashing and everything else, and they make these beautiful concoctions, and they're getting judged. And this guy out here wants a sandwich, or peanut butter and jelly sandwich, if not even ham, not even meat, just some protein and some syrup or some sugar, some corn syrup, high fructose corn syrup, something like that. But I'm for the cooking show. And I'm for the businesses, the 501c3s, that look at the guy and say, hey, look, here, you can have this sandwich. We make enough money. We have enough donors. We have enough people that sense that, it is in their best interest and their selfish interest to aid other people. That's the key. And if you don't want to help people, you don't have to. That's your prerogative. That's your whole goal. That's the food. The food is the virtues, the good things, the value system. Lupe Fiasco, rapper, had an album called Food and Liquor. And food was obviously those good things I just listed, and liquor was the disease, the famine, the starvation, the hunger, the hopelessness, the degradation. All those things combined and coalesced into one figure. It all happened in that same way. Everything that took place was instead given to the point where other people can see that there's a thin line between a capitalist and an altruist. And I'll explain that because they are very similar. Just give me a moment. Capitalism says that private property is protected by the government, and the government can do nothing else but protect individual rights. That's all capitalism is. Altruism is a concern for others and the willingness to sacrifice and to be selfless. Now, you have your 501c3. Are they selfish or are they selfless? The question is, do they have a sense of where they are and what they're doing? Do they have a greater ideal regarding what they have as a capitalist versus an altruist? Because an altruist can claim that they know that capitalism is, it can be good. It's okay. We'll give you that. That's what altruism says. I mean, it's not complete. It's not completely helpful, but we're here too. But capitalism says, no, I'm out only for myself. And if that means aiding somebody else, that means that I actually cared about them for me to aid them. Nobody forced me. Nobody put a gun to my head or a whip to my back. But that's what altruism really is. It's all about guns and whips and fists. It's all about being forced, either by government means or by other individuals who band together as a collective and try to say that altruism is kind, polite, nice. And it's neither of those things. None of them. It's about having the understanding of where you can be in this planet at this time and for all time. Because you only get one go around. That's it. That's all we have and all we ever will have. We have one chance to do this right. One. So it's the food. It's all in the food. I mean, you have these extraordinary chefs with their extreme talents. Then you have places like in Sudan and so many other countries in Africa and in South America and Asia and Central Europe. People are literally dying from malnutrition, starving in the streets. Do you want that in your life? Do you want that as a existent, something that actually occurs? Would you want that? Would you say that's something that should happen? I don't. I don't subscribe to any organizations other than the Ayn Rand Institute and the Snitch Network. All I have is my way of saying that those two organizations are going to propel people to think. That's the key, to think. You have to be able to think about all of this. It gives you the impetus to say, you know what? I don't like how the world is right now. I don't have that much money. I don't have any power. I'm not in any position. Maybe. Maybe you are. But if you aren't, you have the opportunity to say, I'm not going to stand by all this. I'm not going to sit down and watch as people fight in the streets or war or starve to death. I'm going to give to the Red Cross. I'm going to give to, certain organizations that are legitimate. I'm going to give to I'm going to donate to Walmart. If that's possible, maybe just buy a few things that you want that improve your life. And the fact that you have purchased so many items from Walmart, they've been able to create such wealth in the hundreds of billions of dollars that it doesn't even matter how much you have to do. It doesn't matter. What matters is what you do, what you choose to do, what you think is rational and selfish. That's proper. Because that's what selfishness is. Selfishness is taking care of yourself because you are your one of one, none before you, none to come. You extend that to your wife or husband, and you extend that to your children. These are your values. This is your value system. And it extends from being a rational individual, an individualist, which is even more because you have the idea of the IST as idealism, almost like a philosophy in itself. I remember I used to have conversations with a guy in Northampton, Massachusetts. He always said, he just looked disgruntled and I said, no, there's, there's all these smartphones and smart cars and everything. We're the smart people. And I didn't answer him right away because I wanted to understand exactly why he said it. But I got to thinking and I said, well, there's Wall Street and there's Silicon Valley and there's Hollywood. These are the three top most hated cultures in the country, in the United States. Probably because they're the most productive. I mean, you look at the box office receipts in Hollywood and you're astounded. This movie made how many $billion? And you look at Silicon Valley and you look at all the quote unquote tech giants. They try to say that it's almost like an update of the robber barons. But I use tech giants more so as affectionately. You have your Tim Cook and your Steve Jobs that just rest in rock and power to him. You have Tim Cook, as I said. You have Mark Zuckerberg. You have Jack Dorsey. Even you have so many people that have revolutionized the game, revolutionized our lives completely. And you have Wall Street. You have people like there's so many people on Wall Street to name, and they don't get a lot of press. That's the thing, unless they're in handcuffs. That's the sad part. You don't know a Wall Street person's name until they either start an altruistic organization or they're being let out in handcuffs. And that's the sadness too, because there's so many different people who would say that, look, Wall Street is the reason for an iPhone. It's like, what? Wall Street is the reason for Facebook. What? Wall Street is the reason for your favorite Marvel comic universe movie. And you just wonder, you're like, well, that sounds true. That sounds about right. I think. I'm not sure how that works, but it's the people like venture capitalists and hedge fund managers that pump money into the system and who make billions of dollars off of it that allow for different organizations and companies to flourish. I mean, that's the food. That's the real food. See, I have my first commenter from L Devs says, "What's up, Sky? What do you think about Tucker Carlson and Fox News?" What I think about Tucker Carlson and Fox News is I think it's just more irrationality. Tucker Carlson is an irrationalist. He doesn't think things through completely. He has one of the worst idealism of America. He's probably been reading a lot, listening to a lot of lyrics about songs about America. Oh, beautiful for spacious skies and amber waves of grain and pearl magic majesty and this land is your land from the islands and from the mountain ranges to the east, to the shores. He thinks it's because of physical beauty that America is great. And that's completely fallacy. That's a complete fallacy. America is great because of ideas, because of our founding fathers, because of our initial founding documents. That's what makes this country great. So I hope I answered your question, LDevs. Thanks you for checking in and being my very first commenter in my live. This continues. Okay. LDevs wants to know, what about him being fired? Okay, so he's being fired, and this is odd too because they quickly said that Don Lemon was fired. Like there's no equivocation, there's no guessing or in that field. They just said that man was fired, as he should have been too. He should have been tossed. He's not one of the best journalists in the world, and that's an understatement. But Tucker Carlson is pretty horrible too. He got fired because Stacy Galore is in here now. He got fired because of the fact that he falsified falsehoods regarding the Dominion company and their voting machines. He spoke ill of them in a way that was completely non-factual. Like everything he said was against reality. Everything. That's why he was fired. And I hope that answers your question. and once again, peace to Stacy Galore. I know you hate hard, and I appreciate the hatred. I really do. Thank you for that. But what I'm talking about is the food. I mean, I'm talking about literal food and the metaphorical food, the good things, the great ideas, the great thoughts, the great men and women who built America up from nothing, came out the mud, and built this country into a majestic, magical, mystical, still mystical, but I mean this in a proper way. Fantastic place. Fantastic comes from fantasy. So it's a wonderful place to live, even if you're at the lowest levels. The poorest person living in the New Orleans, Louisiana, right now, is a CEO and a president of a Fortune 500 company compared to somebody in Sudan. That's a fact. They live in such poverty. It's not even the same type of poverty. We have poverty where we have fat people. We have poverty where we have iPhones, air conditioners, cars, and that's still poverty. And we're at 11.6% in America, the poverty level. 11.6% of people are in poverty. And it's not extreme. They probably have enough money to buy ice cream and probably have enough money to buy Jordans, but they live in a depressed area and they don't have enough income to probably base, their wishes upon the world. L. Dev says the food in the U.S. is riddled with mad chemicals, steroids, and antibiotics. No, as it should be. And what are chemicals? Chemicals are anything. Water is a chemical. H2O, hydrogen, and 2 parts oxygen. It's chemical. And what do we use every day? What is it? 70% of our body and 72% of the world is made up of water. And genetically modified organisms are beautiful because they allow pests to fall off. They allow more shelf life for various different types of foods. The steroids, that could be a problem depending on what your diet is. You should have a choice of what you put in your body. These chemicals are not good for the human body, especially over time. I disagree. These chemicals are what give us the longevity and the standard of life and the quality of life that we never had before. Now, it's declined. We used to have a ever climbing life expectancy. Now we have over so many says I'm not sure, but we have so many different products and different literal foods that you have at the choice at the grocery store that you should be able to discern on your own selfishly what you want to eat, drink, or take in your own body. And the FDA should have nothing to do with it. There should be no FDA. Federal Drug or the Food and Drug Administration should not exist. It's a completely evil, vicious organization that the government bureaucrats dreamed up once upon a time. And it just stands for against reason. Do you know how many millions of lives have been lost because of the FDA? The FDA says that you can't buy this drug that you could use. It could prevent you from having cancer or it could cure your cancer because we haven't done enough test trials yet, or we don't want to test on animals, or we don't want to test on humans, or we don't want to fill in the blank. And the FDA denies and dismisses any attempts for people to take those drugs. And for foods, they want to make sure they have the non-GMO on the package on the front with giant letters and bold print and italics. They make sure they say non-GMO. There's no, genetically modified organisms involved. So you don't have to worry. You don't have to be scared anymore. When GMOs are some of the most vital and vibrant additions to our country and around the world. Other countries around the world use GMOs too. Okay, I answer L-Devs. L-Devs is very vocal today. The problem is there is no choice. The food companies do not properly disclose what they put in the food and how it will affect the body long term. I disagree with that. I think that food companies should be selfish. They should worry about the bottom line. They should be worried about the money they make, because that's the key. That's what keeps them alive. It's the lifeblood of the structure, the infrastructure of this world, and money is the key, and the dollar is still strong. With food companies, you have long-term effects with on the body, the foods. Yes, and to certain degrees, it's the same thing with anyone who's obese, morbidly obese, the kind you have to, take out a wall for them to go outside. Those kind of people that just eat and eat, and also the opposite of that, the people that have bulimia and or anorexic, they have the time and to be nutritious, but for whatever reason, maybe mental illness or whatever the case may be, they decide not to have enough food. And that's the irony too in this country. We're so abundant, we have so much food that people decide not to have food. Super ironic. Here's a question. from LDEFs. I really respect LDEFs. It's really going on at the expense of people's health. No, not at the expense of people's health, but because of the fact that companies can make a dollar based on the fact that people have the choice, do have the choice. And that's what you pay for. That's the vote. Your dollar is a vote for a company. If you want to buy Welch's, and this is no advertisement, they're not paying me. Or if you want to buy another brand, you say, okay, I'm going to buy Welch's over them, and then that's fine. You just made a vote. You just said, this is the choice for my body and my mind. You said that I want this over that. And that goes to your own health. It's not the company's fault. The company is just trying to make money. There's the bottom line again. They're just trying to make a buck, which is virtuous and good. So the food is virtue. It's value. It's consisting of the fact that the Sudanese in Khartoum are, suffering great deal because of infighting between generals, which is a sad case. It's a very sad situation, very serious and dire situation. But, we shouldn't, as a government, shouldn't have one bit of food or clothing or any other goods sent over there whatsoever on the government's dime, because it's not the government, it's actually us. A lot of people say that. It's like you bring up the idea of, private land, private roads, private this, private that, everything privatized except general, government buildings and government facilities. Privatize the national forests, privatize, the state parks, should all be privatized. And then they say, what about the roads? What if people just make, irrational decisions and, make roads to nowhere? Well, they'll not be around for a long time because people will figure that out just like anything else. Does the government make iPhones? Does the government make vehicles? No, they contract with other corporations and companies, and they make their own vehicles based on the money from companies like Cadillac. That's what the the president rides around in. He doesn't pay for the gas. He doesn't pay for the tires and the engine and the repairs and the upkeep. He doesn't have to. The American people pays for all that. So when you have private roads and you have a contract that has a private, sensibility to it, like Cadillac, I'm sure has with the American government, the United States government, it's like if you had those roads that go nowhere and you just see how long those companies stay around. You see how long they can succeed and be prosperous and bountiful in their money making skills. Just see. I mean, you just think about someone standing in front of the Shark Tank sharks. Pitch that as an idea. Well, I was considering making my own roadway straight into a ditch, and they would look and say, "What? I don't care about your valuation. I don't care about what you're saying, beyond, going with your roads. You make no sense. I'm out." That would be the case. And people still scratch their heads about private roads. Now, we can have a whole discussion about tolls or satellite trackers in your car or, some kind of system where you do pay for those private roads. We can discuss all that. But the principle, the ideal is that everything should be privatized except the law courts, police, and military. That's it. Nothing else. That's the only things that should be privatized. The only thing that should be government official. It should be government bodies, government agencies. Everything else should be privatized. Pardon. So if we take into account the food, the goodies, the scrumptious meals, the words of affection, the big businesses. And that's kind of like a itchy scratchy kind of term too. You say, oh, big business, big, I said earlier, big tech, these big companies. And it's like small business. Oh, small business. Oh, wow. Really? Nah, that's so nice. And they're nice too. I'm not knocking small business. Small business runs parts of this country. There are over 3 million small businesses in this country, and they all should, deserve respect and honor and glory. But you also have to remember the big businesses. The big businesses are the reason why there are small businesses. And if you want to argue about Walmart and other companies taking over mom and pop shops, just think about all the money that the mom and pop shops receive from Walmart. And it's not just the money. Money is a big issue. Money is a major factor. But the decision making skills, the ideas that are involved, and mom and pop, moving on and maybe retiring or building another company, building their own Walmart. I mean, Walmart. I mean, we think about it like these things is when they're huge, when they're grown up, when they're minute bowl size. But everyone on this planet had to start off humble. We all had humble beginnings because we were little people. We were little tiny babies. We didn't come out, Michael Jordan 6'6" from North Carolina. We didn't come out, CEO of Apple, Tim Cook. We didn't come out the womb that way. We made choices. We made decisions about our lives from the earliest stages. And we had to say whether we want to be the guy on the corner with the can or with the hat in the middle of the highway with the sign, God bless, anything helps, all of that. I resent that. Like Paul Mooney said, I resent that, especially in this country where the opportunities are immense. I don't care if you, and that's the part too. I'm jumping all around, but it's still about the food, and I'm going to make a food reference. McDonald's, I mean, or not the food, a nail salon or a hair styling, business. You got to have a license. You got to be licensed to braid somebody's hair, to do nails, to run the McDonald's. You may not need a license to flip burgers or clean the floors or do the fries, but there has to be a diploma on the wall. This place inspected by the government. This has its position in whatever stage it is. You have a restaurant. This restaurant is protected under the government law to administer alcohol, to be in business. That's part of the problem. Government should be our aid. It should be our defense system only. And the three agencies I mentioned: court system, cops, and military. Warriors, police, and judges. That's all. That's it. That's everything that should be. But we're so hung up. We're hung up on the fact that these people have found a way to say government is good because it gives, not because it protects. That's our main issue. That's not the food. That's poison. So what the food is the industriousness, the ability to build businesses, the fight to get rid of government controls and regulations, and after that, taxes. Because that's the thing. We always stick around, the taxes are so high. Oh, inflation, regulations and controls. If we get rid of every regulation, every control, we will have a much safer enjoyable, cleaner, healthier environment. And again, back to Earth Day, it was just a few days ago. The human environment, which is flourishing, which is gaining more and more and more people. That's the key. To keep us in good health and in good spirits. That's the food. I thank you for being with me during this time of my first live video. I hope everything goes well. I don't know from here. I'm still exploring. It's a lot of fun. And I will be speaking to you at a later date. Thank you very much. Take care.